Okay, great. I'm going to share my screen here. Did I get you moved, Francisco? I'm hoping. Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, can everybody see my screen okay? If you're on camera, if you can give me a thumbs up if you can see.
Yes, we can.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, yes, we can.
Excellent, thank you so much. Okay, so I wanted to welcome everybody tonight, and I know other people are hopping on. I'll remind folks that we are translating this meeting and we are recording this meeting, and so let's go ahead and get started. I sent out an agenda to the group, and really this is just a sort of a starting point for us. And I'm happy to make revisions or take comments or whatever. This is kind of what I gathered from folks that have emailed me in between the last meeting and this meeting. And then also some comments that we had during the last meeting. So first thing we're going to do is review the agenda. And then we're going to have an update from the National Western Center Community Investment Fund Committee. I know they have a presentation, and Liliana, you had asked about being able to share your screen. You will be able to, whomever in your group wants to share the screen. I'll take this down as soon as we've made some changes if we need to. Let's see. Then we're gonna, here are some ideas that came in, and you know, if I didn't put names by them, but I'm happy to identify who these came from. And one of the questions is does this group want the National Western Center Authority to hire a facilitator for these community meetings? That question comes from a few people that I've talked to, but also from me. I think that, you know, I have been we've brought this group together and have been convening this group, and I've acted as sort of the person to recognize those who want to speak. But the whole goal for us, I think, is to allow this to be a community-driven process, which would imply that that I would not be facilitating the meeting because I'm part of the National Western Center Authority. And so I think that was the origin of that question: is it time to bring somebody in to kind of to facilitate and help that's selected by the community to begin to give some additional direction to these meetings. Then there was some discussion at the last meeting. I believe Angela mentioned it, and then I also got an email from Armando. I'm not sure if Armando Payan is on yet, making reference to the idea of, you know, with so many tasks, does it make sense to create some sort of working group structure? And then I've listed a number of the different things: future phases of the National Western Center, community outreach, community representation on the board. And then, you know, is there a bigger general meeting to communicate sort of all of the updates on the National Western Center campus? And Armando specifically submitted kind of a standard format for reporting out if there were working groups. So we can talk a little more about that. Then I also heard from Mickey Zeppelin. He is not in the meeting tonight. He has family in town, but also wanted to talk about the concept of an ombudsman for the CAC or the community group. And that may fall into the facilitator, but it may not. And so I think he wants an opportunity to present that in the future. And then talk about the next meeting. We have determined that we can try to do a hybrid meeting with translation, and our translators have been working really hard to make that happen. And so we'll talk about that at the end. So at this point, if you would raise your hand if you have a question or addition to the agenda, happy to hear that and make additions as necessary. AE, you're clapping, but maybe you're raising your hand.
I don't have my dollar store glasses on.
Okay.
I'll put my dollar store glasses. Well, yeah. Is that a clap? Oh, that's all I have.
Oh, okay.
That's all I have.
Well, it looked like a clap. There's your hand raised. There you go. Nice work.
I like that programming.
Excellent.
I just saw Liliana's chat come up. Are we doing a round of introductions before we get into, and so I think that's a good idea too. You want me to pause while we do that?
Yeah, hold
I
on. Let me
have a
just,
couple.
yeah, so let me do this. No, let me just put that on the agenda here. We'll do that after this, and then you can give your, okay, there we go. I just added that. How's that?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, so regarding the agenda,
Mhm.
there's a lot of one, I don't know, I guess the general thing would be a report from the National Western Center Authority Office regarding the a couple items. One, there wasn't a lot of specific reporting about what happened with the roundup at the National Western Stock Show. And I don't think that's strictly limited to the CIF. But anyway, I'd like to know what happened there from the point of view of the authority office. The question about the $50 million that CSU received in addition to the $200 million was something you were going to check out, Liz. So I'd like to hear what you found out. Also, the last meeting, I've talked to a few people, and I hope those that I've talked with and anyone else who was feeling the same will help out with this in the discussion regarding the clarification of what the mechanisms were having to, or are in the present, having to do with the assignment of representation to the authority board seats that are designated as voting and non-voting from the coordinates of the GS neighborhoods. There was some procedural confusion about that. And people are trying to understand it in the context of the framework agreement. In the interest of urgencies, when talking about the task forces or the task groups, whatever you want to call them, I kind of like the term force myself, task force, but work groups, whatever, the work groups. I think that there was some concern about prioritizing getting clarification on the process whereby the authority board representatives are selected and how the relationship is formed constructively and with the neighborhoods at large. So I just wanted, we can talk about prioritizing just where you put it there. There's some other possible task forces in that concept, but we can elaborate on that. And I think that's it. That's it for now. So.
Great, thank you. AE, were there other folks that had anything they wanted to add? Any comments? Great. And I'm going to ask you guys, like I'm managing two screens here and I'll watch my best for hand raises and stuff, but if you see that I'm missing something, please feel free to just chime in. I feel like I'm driving a truck with multiple like dashboards or something. So, okay, so why don't we go ahead and start with introductions, and I'll just start with myself and then we'll go around. I'll just call your name as we go. I'm Liz Adams. I'm the Deputy CEO at the National Western Center Authority. Liliana?
Hey there, I'm Liliana, and I just heads up, I'm not feeling well. I'm going to try and make it as long as I can, and trying to save my voice as much as I can for the presentation. But hi, I'm your neighbor from Swansea, also on the CIF.
Excellent, thank you. Tony?
My name is Tony Garcia. I'm an Amelia resident, and I'm a member of the Community Investment Fund.
And Tony, just for future, we got that you're a member of the community, but you're a little muffled. So
I'm sorry, it's the speaker here.
yeah, no, now that's a little better. There you go. Susan? Oh, you're muted, Susan.
Susan Aldretti with Councilwoman Ortega's office.
Thanks. Jorge?
My name is Jorge Mario, and I am here representing EGS and Partners.
Perfect. Alfonso?
Hi everyone, Alfonso. Grew up and live here in Elyria, and I'm here mostly as part of the coalition during most of these meetings, but today also a part of the CIF.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Sandra?
Sorry, I was muted. Sandra Ruiz, and I'm a global resident representing, well, I don't know if I'm representing, but I'm from AGS and Partners and also from the National Western Authority Board.
Thank you. Oh, my screen moved around. Jules?
Hi, I'm Jules Kelty. I'm Executive Director of Focus Points Family Resource Center.
Thanks, Jules. Angelina?
Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Angelina Torres. Soy parte de la coalición GS. Soy residente de Swansea. Gracias.
Thank you. María?
Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es María y soy residente de Swansea y parte de la coalición. Gracias.
And Angela Garcia?
Hello, everyone. My name is Angela Garcia. I am a Glovo resident and a member of the CIF.
Thank you. AE?
Hey, everyone, this is, I'm a little hoarse myself, but this is Ann Elizabeth. I'm in Globeville and member of the CAC. And Liliana, I'll put you on the spot. Liliana was a historic member of the CAC, I want to mention, because she has a good set of institutional memories around the conversations that went into the CIF. So I just kind of wanted to add that depth to what the report is that she's going to give. Hope you don't mind, Liliana.
Thanks for that, AE. Ann Hayes?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ann Hayes. I'm a partner with Westfield Company. We're a local developer with 17 acres in Elyria, Swansea.
Right, and Lacey?
Hi, everyone. This is Lacey Champion. I am the Community Outreach Manager for Northeast Transportation Connections, which does transportation services in the community.
Great, thanks, Lacey. And Mercedes?
Hola a todos, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Mercedes González y soy residente de Swansea y parte de la coalición GS. Gracias.
Great, we have Slavica.
Good afternoon, Slavica Park. I'm with National Western Stock Show.
Okay, Matt Vernon.
Hey, all, Matt Vernon, Focus Points Family Resource Center.
Thanks, Matt. Jen Wellborn.
Hi, Jen Wellborn with Citi.
Thanks, Jen. We have Beth's iPhone.
Hi, thank you. This is Beth Vogelsang. And just hello, everybody, and many familiar names and faces. And I just was going to listen in for a bit this evening. I've been working with Dottie in the area for a number of years, and I'm working right now with Anthony Aragon on a lot of this community outreach. And one of our points that we'd like to try to do a better job with is stronger integration with National Western and all the things that are going on over here. So when possible, we might drop in for a bit and just try to follow along. So thanks so much.
Beth. And Jenna?
Hi, everyone. Sorry. Jenna Garcia, I do communications for the National Western Center Authority. Good to see everyone tonight.
Awesome, thank you. I think I got everybody. I'm just looking down my screen because all of the boxes shifted. Yes, and if I didn't get you, please go ahead and chime in right now, but I think that was everyone.
Liz, can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Slavica, are you no longer with CRL Associates? Are you strictly with the National Western?
No, I'm with CRL Associates, but the role tonight is I'm here on behalf of our client, which is the stock show. Thanks, AE.
Oh, okay, thanks for clarifying.
And I don't know if I clarified last meeting or not, but Jenna Garcia was at the mayor's office of the National Western Center, and she has moved over into our office at the National Western Center Authority, and we're really excited she's with us. So just wanted to clarify that as well. Great. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then we're going to move into an update from the National Western Center Community Investment Fund Committee. I don't know if, I'm guessing Liliana, Alfonso, and others, Angela, I don't know if you're all doing it together, but I'm just going to go ahead and hold on, stop share. There we go. And if you want to go ahead and share, whoever has your presentation, that'd be great. There it is.
All right, welcome everyone. And yeah, I think I'll kick us off, and then Tony and Alfonso and Angela can jump in whenever, whenever you all would like. Let me just move my controls over so I can see what I'm reading here. So just a quick overview of our agenda. We'll kind of just sort of do a quick round of sort of introducing the idea, a quick overview of what we've done so far, where we're going, and then hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A. But if we are running short on time, then we are happy to take any questions by email, but you can send them directly to any of us that are on the committee, or send them to Liz, and we can compile some questions. Right. So one thing that we wanted to start off with is, I'm not sure if everyone has had an opportunity to know and hear this this poem called In La Kesh, and it's based out of Mayan thought and philosophy, Mayan worldview, that we operate with each other in reciprocity. And so one thing that's really important for us in this founding group for the Community Investment Fund is to start with these strong community values in mind. And one of the things that has inspired us is this poem. And I think all of us that are on the committee right now have been inspired by this poem in one way or another. And so we want to share it with you and share it as the foundational introduction of the work that we've done so far. So if you would just humor me. So I'm going to say a line, and then you're going to repeat after me, and you can say it in English or in Spanish. I know the interpretation is going on in Spanish. If you wouldn't mind unmuting for just this part and then muting back once you're done, I would just love to hear everyone's voices as I read the poem and you repeat after me. Okay, so I'm going to start off saying one line, and then you're going to say that line after me. Right? You are my other me.
You are my other me.
If I do harm to you,
if I do harm to you,
I do harm to myself.
I do harm to myself.
If I love and respect you,
if I love and respect you,
I love and respect myself.
I love and respect myself.
So thank you so much for doing that with us this evening. I hope that can set our tone for our conversations together in CIF and together as community. So as Liz mentioned, the CIF right now is made up of a few volunteer community folks, which is Tony, Alfonso, Tony Garcia, Alfonso Espino, Angela Garcia, and Selena Martinez representing Global. So we're a lean machine right now. Oh. If I could just ask if you're not muted, if you could please just mute yourself. Or Liz, I don't know if you have master control of muting. The other thing that we wanted to do is just do a quick timeline of, oh, and I'm sorry, I just realized this, this particular slide is not fully translated, so I apologize. But I'll just keep talking and the interpreters can continue as I go. So way back when in 2017, the Community Investment Fund is included in the framework agreement when it is signed, and it formalizes this commitment for a community investment fund. So Councilperson Ortega hosts a series of community meetings on the community investment fund structure. And through that listening process, several ideas were brought up and then sort of kind of sat for a bit. And then, you know, COVID and all the things happened. And so then in the spring of 2021, the CIF committee is launched through a process designed by council members Ortega and C. DeBaca. And so that was a group that was selected through a process that they came up with. And then, so it was a group much larger than what we are now. And I think folks, for a variety of different reasons, you know, sort of fell off. And so we have the core group that we're working with right now. And then moving into the summer of 2021, the community group decides that we want to be independent of city council and authority facilitation. And so we move into facilitating and coordinating our own meetings. And then fall of 2021, so the fall that we just had, we had $400,000 awarded or earmarked and awarded to Community Investment Fund. This money was petitioned by the National Western Center Authority in the fall for, which we'll go a little bit deeper into what that money is sort of tagged with. In the winter of 2021, 2022, sorry, I should say winter and spring, because we're still not quite, we still don't quite have a fiscal sponsor yet, but that we're in process of continuing to look for, interview, and select fiscal sponsor. So we developed a request for proposals for that fiscal sponsor, and we're still actively in that process. We don't yet have a fiscal sponsor. The money right now, I believe, is in an account with the authority, but we're hoping to bring that out to an independent fiscal sponsor. And then sometime this spring and summer, we're hoping to do some membership outreach to continue really setting the foundational structures and processes that we need to continue the work of the Community Investment Fund. Tony, Alfonso, Angela, anything else that you want to include in the timeline up to this point?
No, I'm good. At this point, I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Oh, and this should read 400,000. So sorry for my typos. So what has the CIF been tasked to do? So we have been tasked to really coalesce as a group and begin to identify goals for our work, as well as timelines. We've been asked to formalize, begin to formalize and have conversations around mission, vision, and values. And we have been working on figuring out what strong internal working structures are important for setting this foundational group up, and then what possibilities exist for the future, future iterations of what the CIF will be eventually, as a as a grant maker in the community. We've also been initiating some negotiations around revenue mechanisms with the National Western Center Authority, focused on that community benefits subcommittee. We don't have anything formalized or in writing yet as far as any additional revenue mechanisms other than the roundup. But we are working, and we realize that we do need more than just the roundup. So we continue to negotiate revenue mechanisms for that purpose. And then we've been asked to leverage this technical assistance money for facilitation and to find those dynamic revenue mechanism structures that will continue to fund and perpetuate this community investment fund, as well as create a transition plan for new and future membership of the community investment fund. Sorry, I see a chat. Oh, that's from a while ago. Thanks, Jules. So what have we been up to since the spring and summer of last year? We have created a regular meeting schedule within the group to talk about governance, goal setting, and initial negotiations around the revenue mechanism. We've created that RFP to steward the $400,000 award through a fiscal sponsor. Again, still in that process. Initiated negotiations with the authority on what we're calling the Community Impact and Reparation Fee, or CIR. And we have now, for the past few months, have regularly attended the authority community benefits committee meetings. And that was this particular term was coined out of a conversation and really inspired by what Alfonso shared in terms of making sure that we're clear and focused on accountability for the project. And then this is sort of our initial visioning statements. So I'll just read them as they are. We are a strong network of neighbors holding development accountable to the GES communities. We are stewards of community funds and benefits. We are using cooperative and shared leadership structures to do this work. We are well organized and self-perpetuating. We are successfully funding projects that are responsive to community wants and needs. And we are by, for, and with community. Again, these are visioning statements. These are what we want to be, what we aspire to be. And these are the aspects and values that really drive our work up to this point. And hopefully you all feel like they resonate and will continue on to future iterations of this work. I think, okay, so we wanted to give you some context around what the $400,000 award was, and this was a memo. This is taken directly from a memo from Brad Buchanan and the authority to Brendan Hanlon, who's the CFO for the City and County of Denver, also on the authority board, right? Or I'm not sure what his term is. I'm not sure if he's still there.
Yes, on both.
Okay. And so they sort of have a directive of what this money can be used for the community investment fund. Again, for governance uses, so looking for that fiscal agent and developing a guideline for the disbursement of the CIF dollars and the use of funds to continue looking at diverse revenue strategies, looking at ideas, looking at mechanisms, policy recommendations, etc. It is in Spanish. And Liz, I'm not sure if you've shared this with the interpreters yet, but if you could send them I should have started with this. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I will share it with the whole entire group as well.
Okay.
Yes.
The other piece that's also a part of this memo is on the future phases and community benefits that could include identifying community structure to engage in a development process, strategic advice on all things related to community benefits, a process by which we identify community needs and priorities, and that way, we can figure out what then needs to be funded or included in a community benefits agreement. It also includes an opportunity to work on development and implementation of a collaborative process with the city around land use planning and those future phases of development, including negotiation to develop a community benefits agreement. So a lot of organizational process mapping, strategic work that could be used with this money. And then just the final section of that particular memo, just wanted to include and share with you all as well. And I think maybe in the follow-up, Liz, you can send that the memo, just so everyone has a copy of that.
Noted.
Right, any technical assistance support will be competitively bid. We know we want to be financially sound with this money that we have to work with to kick off this work. The selection will be done through a process developed by the group, and community benefits agreement technical assistance will have an extra sort of tag of demonstrated experience supporting diverse communities in the development of a successful community benefits agreement. And let's see, community will hold a contract with the advisory group and manage performance, and all technical assistance will contribute to a community website of materials and recommendations, hold open meetings, provide public comment, interpretation services. So we are slowly but surely working on this, and we know that the community website of materials, recommendations, etc., is something that we want to get done sooner rather than later, because we've been asked, and we think it will help with the roundup if we have a place for people to be directed to know a little bit more about our neighborhoods and what's going on. And Jorge, I see your hand up right now. I'm gonna run through. I'm gonna have us run through the rest of the presentation. If we could just hold questions until the end, just because I don't want to be short on time at the end of the meeting. So just hold on to that thought, or you can even type it into the chat if you like. And then Tony or Alfonso, do you want to take this next part? Don't raise your hands all at once.
No, I was on mute. So I'm sorry. Yeah, we have a lot of basic tasks that we have to carry out, which have been a little, they can be a little bit difficult because they're time consuming, and all of us are working and such. So the first piece is we are in the process of trying to finalize a fiscal sponsor. We have put out an RFP. We've had conversations with the Denver Foundation and Mile High United Way, and there's another group that only have the initials that everybody knows it but me. But we're just trying to get that in place so that we can start to hold the money and figure out, then develop some of the disbursements that we're going to need to do, and what that structure is going to be like. It's taken a little while. It's a process, and we're moving forward with it. We also need to be in the process of negotiating funding source. We started to talk about this in the fall, in the late fall, and then it kind of, when the stock show opened, it kind of fell towards the back end. But this is something that's still really a high priority for us, because I think we all are in unity that the roundup is not going to be sufficient to really do anything, do the kind of things that our community needs. It's not that we're ungrateful, but we just really need to negotiate a broader picture, and we're working towards that. And then we want to create a structure that allows us to all work together in a collaborative way to take in community input and develop something that is long-term, that will, with the community that has so many needs and so many interests. This is going to be a long-term process, but this is a goal that we're trying to put those pieces into place now so that they will sustain us moving forward. So where we are now, that we haven't really put together all the pieces that we need and how that money is going to be dispersed. And I think it's okay, because we're in a place where we have a lot of needs and build and how it will support our stuff. So part of the $400,000 can be used toward defining what a CBA phase development plan for the campus. Keep in mind, what we're doing is we're really putting something together that a lot of times takes 5, 6, 7 years to really do, and we are really coming up to the end of our first year at working on it, and so all of these things are in process. I think where we are right now is at a good place. We're hoping to be able to make community grants, but we're not in any place. We can't even define what it is or some of the things, and what we have to disperse is not really any money. So when that happens, I think that we're at the place where it's incumbent on us to find to set up mechanisms so when we actually do have some funds to disperse. Okay, so I have AE says he's not hearing me. Is everybody else okay?
I'm hearing you fine, Tony. I don't know if others.
I hear you.
I hear you.
Okay, Alfonso can hear me. Apparently everybody can. So
Yeah, I
everybody can
hear
hear what
you
I
too.
say.
Yeah, I hear you too.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, so we're looking for people, for us, what is it? We're looking out for an invitation to join the CIF in the coming. We want to be more participatory in that process. Also, we are actually looking for members at some point here in the next couple of months. We're looking at how we can add people in June and start to rotate them into our process.
I think that was it. Alfonso or Angela, do you want to add anything else before we jump into Q&A?
I think the only thing that I would add, and thank you as well, Liliana and Tony, for presenting. I think the only thing that I would add is that last part that Tony shared about pretty soon here we're the CIF. Just I think the only caveat to that is the group has to solidify, like the vision, the mission, also, like expectations and norms for members of the CIF. And then once that can be defined, then that's when, just so people know, that's when we will be prepared or feel ready to just bring in people to make it fair to, I think, both us and them being future members of the CIF. So it's clear what it is that our job is. So that's about it that I would add. So.
Yeah, no, thank you for adding that. Go ahead, Angela.
And I just want to follow up on what Alfonso had to say, is like, we're trying to develop questions that we think people would want to know, so that they can, when they come into the SIF, they feel comfortable enough to be a part of it and to be able to move on and take over when we have new board members coming in. So this is an exciting time for us. I want to thank Liliana and Tony and Alfonso for their commitment over the past few months. I deeply appreciate it. And I especially appreciate Liliana. She keeps us like on track and takes excellent notes, and she's just been amazing. So thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to reinforce that. Liliana, thank you very much for putting this together. This is quite a bit. One side note, I'm looking at the famous Anthony Garcia's murals here. I'm the less famous, but just to tell, in case you don't know this, he's receiving an award from the Cesar Chavez Peace and Justice Committee at the end of the month. So there we go, our Globeville guy, making big.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Tony. I didn't know that. Thank you for sharing that with us. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing. We'll have some Q&A time. Maybe we should assign some time. Liz, I don't know how much time do you want to allow for Q&A before moving on, or check in with you? Do we have time for Q&A? And if
sure,
so,
we
how
do.
much time?
Yeah, let's not do more than 5 or 10 minutes, but I'm watching the clock. So
okay, thank you. Let us know. So I'm actually going to stop
Yeah.
sharing so we can see our faces.
Yeah.
And Jorge, so it looks like Jorge's had his hand up.
First, I want to say thanks. Thanks a lot.
Oh, it's a little, Jorge, I think it's a little, I can't quite hear you. I don't know if it's just me this time.
Yeah, you're a little muffled, Jorge.
How about now?
It's a little better.
Okay.
Yes.
Basically, what can you hear me better?
Yes.
Well, basically, I want to say thank you very much for all the people that have been involved in defining this, or at least to find it. Second, $400,000 are peanuts, and not really peanuts, and are just a drop in the bucket. And it's not going to go a long way. Third, I think that I would like to know who is going to prioritize the distribution, because I don't want, it won't be fair to find this kind of money and then allocate it to one individual or two individuals that become more powerful on the group than anybody else. I think it needs to be distributed. And this money shouldn't be, you shouldn't define someone that needs 100,000, because that's not enough money. Maybe, 10,000, 12,000. There's a lot of projects in the neighborhood that could benefit from that. But again, I just want to say thanks, and whoever is going to participate in this, don't gobble it up without distributing it democratically in the neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Jorge. I think that's exactly what we're looking for, and honestly, so we're creating the foundations for how we're going to work together, but ultimately it's the future iterations of the group that we want to make sure that our values are clear, that our expectations are clear of each other, and the way that we make decisions now may not be the way that we make decisions in 5 years or in 3 years. And so we want to make sure that expectations are clear, but that we remain flexible enough to be responsive to community. And it's not just the people in the committee or sort of at the core of the committee making the decisions, but we want to make sure there's feedback loops. That, again, that reciprocity that I mentioned at the beginning, not only is the folks in the group sort of keeping their ears and eyes out, but also that other community folks not directly in the committee or the board or whatever it turns out to be, that there is that reciprocity and exchange and more democratic and less hierarchical type of processes and decision making, so that we hear you loud and clear on that, and that's something that's important to us too.
I want to tell you finally.
I'm sorry.
Can I finish? I like to tell you that I really like your values. and your mission statements, they reflect a lot of consciousness, and I like that. In a world where everybody wants to be dictators, a little bit of openness and democracy will go a long way. Thank you very much.
Tony?
Yeah, I was just going to offer a clarification that this 400,000 is not the funds that'll be going to be distributed within the community. These are set up funds, funds for us to begin the operation and the process of this. But as Liliana is saying, as we move forward to actually ascertaining, getting that money from the National Western, those are the funds that will then be sent, distributed out into the community. This is kind of infrastructure startup kind of thing. There's a lot of things that can be done within that, but we are definitely not in the process of distributing. It's not going to be the funds that are going to be distributed. That's something that's down the line, and we're getting ourselves to that place. But I definitely appreciate your comments about transparency and being open to how we're going to be able to do this so that it benefits the community. Thank you for those comments.
AE?
Yeah, I want to piggyback on what Tony just said, which was really important clarification. I appreciate that, Tony, and say that the roundup was always, even much prior to the framework agreement and all the discussions on the National Western Center Citizens Advisory Committee, was always meant just to be a mechanism. And that was how it was proposed, just a mechanism to keep the door open for additional sources of resources. And it was always meant just to be a gate opener. So the potential in the resources, as far as what they are, is the limits are of our imagination. I do want to say, preceding the concept of the definition or the naming of the Community Investment Fund in the conversations, was the concept of revenue sharing. Revenue sharing in an enterprising project like the National Western presents in the imagination a great deal of possibilities. This is all for discussion when we have more time and more as the CIF fills out and we go forward. But there's a tremendous amount of creative work that I think can be done collaboratively. So I wanted to just kind of open that up, and I've heard a couple possible fiscal sponsors mentioned. There are other possibilities. I hope that that's going to be sort of publicly reviewed a little bit with broader population, and that we can get some real concrete assessments as to what the criteria is and where the mentoring factor might come in, because there are some exciting possibilities that are kind of outside the traditional foundational sponsorships on that. So a lot to explore. And I do appreciate you showing up even safely behind Zoom, Liliana. I really appreciate you hanging in there. And thanks for the work on the committee, you guys. All right, that's all I have to say at the moment.
Thank you, AE. Yes, I think we're in the RFP, which we can also share with everyone the language on that. I can send I'll send that to Liz, and then Liz can send it out. I think we are looking for something a little bit different than a typical structure of sort of like fiscal sponsorship plus that additional like support, mentorship, administration, that like, you know, we're running lean and mean. And yeah, as Tony shared in the chat, if you have any recommendations for other possibilities, please, we're open. So send it to us.
Great.
Lacey has a question in the chat. So you guys are trying to identify sustainable funding, which includes the roundup for future community grants, which ideally will be ongoing. Am I understanding it correctly? Yes. So we're trying to identify as many revenue mechanisms, or as AE put, sort of revenue sharing opportunities as much as possible. So we're not just relying on one or two things. Some of them may be consistent. Some of them may sort of peak, ebb and flow, depending on the events, depending on if we're like, hey, give us a part of your parking contract. Hey, give us a part of your this other contract. And so I think that's where the negotiations are hopefully going to go, and hopefully solidify what what streams are consistent and which then are dependent on events and things coming in.
Great. Let's take Sandra and then we'll get to UAE, okay?
Yo tengo unas preguntas. ¿Para cuánto tiempo es este fondo que hay de $400,000? ¿Tiene determinado tiempo? ¿Se tiene que usar en determinado tiempo? Esa es la primera pregunta. La segunda pregunta es, el fiscal sponsor que están buscando, ¿tiene que ser una agencia grande? Porque mencionaron dos y son de las más grandes. O puede ser cualquier organización que quiera apoyar esta causa. ¿Qué es lo que ustedes están buscando en un fiscal sponsor?
La respuesta para la primera pregunta, tal vez nos puede ayudar. Cuando nos dieron, o sea, asignaron, o sea, que todavía no tenemos los fondos, pero ahí están guardados en una cuenta. Cuando asignaron los fondos, no creo que, y tal vez yo no sé si Tony o Ángela o Alfonso tengan mejor idea, no creo que había como una fecha límite para usar el dinero. Obvio que la queremos usar, pero también queremos ser responsables. No sé si les tiene otra información sobre eso. La segunda pregunta, si quieres te puedo, bueno, les va a compartir el RFP. No solamente estamos buscando organizaciones grandes, pero sí organizaciones que tienen la capacidad para apoyarnos en cómo lo necesitamos. Somos un grupo de voluntarios y tienen que tener experiencia y en manejar fondos. También estamos buscando a alguien. Todavía no sabemos si esto va a crecer o a evolucionar a un non-profit, pero sí queremos a alguien que tenga experiencia con todos los mecanismos financieros de un non-profit. No sé si eso responde a las dos preguntas. Y Liz, if you want to jump in. If there's a time limit to using the $400,000 award.
Yeah, I'm happy to hop in on there. And the answer, Sandra and everybody, is that $400,000 has been moved out of the city into our account, and it does not have there is no clock on that money. It is there, and it will be there until you guys decide how you want to, how the fiscal sponsor and how that whole process will work. I also just want to toss out there, because I've been having, I've been learning and making an effort to learn about what are different resources. And, we talk about revenue sources, but I think there's also something that maybe you guys can put on your list that's about an equity share, right? How is there an equity share on some of the future development? I think that's a fascinating thing that, you guys might consider exploring as you're looking at all the many different ways that the Community Investment Fund could, the sources for the Community Investment Fund. But that 400,000 is there, and it's there for as long as you want it to be.
So
great.
Am I up next? Because I know we're short on time, so I just want to put one quick thing on there.
Go ahead, AE. Yep. And then
yeah, just real quick, bringing it forward, one of the aspects that was in the discussions over the years also is, and it has to do with equity, is it's important that whatever this community investment fund becomes, it does not displace what should be priorities of the city budget for neighborhoods equitably. So this is a very important concept of equity, and not using what should be an enrichment fund and a fund to fill gaps and create, accelerate reparations toward the highest possible quality of life and enriched lives for neighborhoods impacted. this is a very important thing for us to be aware of as we go forward in the discussions. Maybe later you can elaborate toward the CIF on what you're referring to as equity sharing, Liz, because the terminology has come up over the years, but there may be different things people are referring to behind that. I think that's really important. So that's all for future discussion as we surface all the possibilities on this.
Absolutely. I'm gonna have Angela, and I think that'll be our last comment on this because we do need to get to some of the other things since we've added a few things to the agenda. Angela, go ahead.
Thank you, Liz. I just want to clarify that as a SIF, what we're trying to do is also minimize as much conflict of interest as we can. So we're trying to go to like a larger group maybe to minimize on the conflict of interest instead of trying to use somebody who is in the community, not saying that we wouldn't if that's what we have to do, but that is always going to be a bone of contention within our community, because I know I can look at this group of people and I know tomorrow many of you are going to be on another meeting that I'm going to be in, same with next week. So again, we're just trying to minimize as much conflict of interest as we can. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Angela. And I think if everybody's okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to the other items on the agenda. I'm going to go to this list that that AE. I'm trying to get the right screen to share. Here we go. There we go. So the next item was we added. You kind of wanted an updated AE. You requested these items, and I'm sure other folks are curious about these as well. So. You asked for our take on the roundup, and I know that Liliana and the group didn't really talk about it. The roundup during the stock show was not great, and you could even be characterized as abysmal. The total was right around $2,000, I believe. It was $743 from roundup on box office ticket sales for the stock show, and the remainder from SSA or KM Concessions that manages all of the concessions for the stock show, and Aramark, who is the concessionaire in the Coliseum. They collected zero for the roundup. Paul Andrews made a short presentation or made some short comments about this at the board meeting before last, and basically he highlighted the fact that this was it's a difficult time during COVID. We do know that signage was at every register because we monitored that during stock show. But the concessionaires were struggling to bring staff, and they were bringing folks in from literally other states to work. These are the things that Paul Andrews talked about. And so that's basically what they said. So the numbers were not great. And Lucia Guzman on the board basically said to Paul, we hope that in the future that you will do better, and that, and I don't know if she was joking or telling the truth, but was indicating that perhaps he should round up his contribution that they made on tickets. So it was an abysmal number. Why don't I go through this list quickly, and then we can double back on that unless somebody has a quick. Oh, wait, there's Angela. Hold on. Angela, is your hand up now, or is that from before?
Sorry, I'll take it down.
Okay, awesome. I can take it down too, but all right. So let me stop there because these items are not all connected. So did anybody have questions about the roundup? We, as the authority, those concessionaires are not our concessionaires, and so we gave them information. We offered to train their staff. We gave them the signage necessary, and the result was not fantastic. It wasn't even good. We are collecting a roundup at the concessions at the Jurassic Park exhibition. We don't have numbers on that yet. We're about a month in, and so we will be getting some numbers. And we are getting more people rounding up, and the folks that are working at the concessions are asking every single person. And it is because they are standard concessions folks that are working there every single day. So we'll see what happens. I think this has shown us that this was a way to start the community investment fund, but certainly it's one source, and that there are lots of other sources and lots of other ways to create revenue for this fund. So I think generally that's our take on that. AE, you had asked about, let me pull up. I did check in with Jocelyn about, and I'll do a quick, AE, you know so much about this project, and so I'm just going to give everybody a quick background. There was a House Bill 1344 that passed the state legislature in 2015, I believe, and it was the bill that provided funding for CSU to build their buildings on the National Western Center campus. The intention in that bill was that CSU would spend $200 million on the physical structures, the vertical construction of Vita, Terra, and Hydro. They weren't called that back then, but that's what they're called now. And that there would be this additional $50 million that would be sort of complementary and used. The assumption was that a good bit of it would be used up at the Fort Collins campus. So hoping you can see my screen here. These are the things that they're spending the money, the additional $50 million on, and it's Equine Veterinary Teaching Hospital up in Fort Collins, Health Education Outreach Center, which will connect to VITA and the educational experiences, Translational Medicine Institute for equine sports medicine and connections between human and animal health. And then they have a staff person who is doing outreach and K-12 education between these facilities and SPUR. So it's connecting the Fort Collins facilities down to the Denver campus. And then once they get the virtual reality tech installed, and that's been slowed by VR, they're going to have additional connections and virtual connectivity between facilities. And then they're planning some mini anatomy camps. So that's the laundry list that Jocelyn Hiddle from CSU SPUR provided. Are there any questions around that? I'm looking for hands as I'm also switching. And then there was one more question. Let me go back. And then you asked AE because you have great institutional knowledge. You reminded me of something that I did not realize. I knew it had been discussed, and I will admit here that I failed to remember the provision that said that, originally the framework agreement had one community representative who was voting. The Citizens Advisory Committee discussed this at length, and after much discussion, it was decided and then accepted by the parties involved that there would be an additional member on the board that was a non-voting resident of Globeville, Elyria, Swansea. And what I had not remembered was that our bylaws actually do include a provision that says that if the voting member of the voting resident member, if that seat is vacant, then the non-voting member has a right to vote until the voting member is appointed. So thank you, AE, because you brought that up. I went straight to Josh Roberts, and then I have shared that with the mayor's office, because ultimately, we've talked a lot about this, but the mayor's office is responsible for these appointments. But there was a failure on my part to communicate that bylaw to them. So I hope that answers your question about that. So we're now at the stage where I have shared that information with the mayor's office, but I want to say thank you, AE, and my apologies because I missed that. So just wanted to let you know that. Are there questions or comments about that? Because we are going to talk a little more about the representation piece in the next section, but I'm happy to discuss that further. AE, go ahead.
First of all, I want to thank you, Liz, for getting that clarification. And I want to emphasize this is about protecting a process for in that framework agreement, and for the I'm not sure what the word is, but for the, I guess, for the dignity of the part of the partnership that is the neighborhood and the constituency. And I want to say to directly to Sandra as our current voice on the authority board, none of this is personal. All of this has to do with this protocols that we can step off from to have a much clearer relationship with one another, and some of this can help us with the CIF protocols and that kind of a thing. So I think it's very important that we all recognize that we have a legal position in the framework agreement in this relationship to the board of directors. And the framework agreement is a document that can change too, and that's a discussion. But it's very important that the city and the authority work very closely and very transparently with the constituencies out here for us to all understand on an equal level what this document is, what the authorities are, and how we go into the task force we have to go into the task force for clarifying the whole authority board representation with this basic understanding. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate the taking it seriously.
Absolutely. Thank you, AE. And I apologize. I was really kicking myself when I don't, anyway, I looked in one place in the bylaws and it wasn't there, and it was in sort of an obscure spot, and I should have read further in the bylaws. So I apologize, but I'm so glad that you brought it up. Okay, so if we don't have any more comments about those items, thank you, AE, for adding those. I think those were really useful for us. I wanted to talk about these couple of items because they sort of started to surface at the last meeting. There were more people in the last meeting. I think we're down maybe, I don't know, a dozen or so from the last meeting. But I'm glad that people are still joining and attending, and hoping that we can continue to, to expand this group in whatever way you guys see fit. But when we started this, when I say we, I'm talking about the authority. Our goal was to provide a place, a forum, a platform, since of course we're doing this on Zoom, for folks to come together and sort of begin to work on a number of items, which a lot of them have surfaced and they seem pretty consistent. But in addition to others, but I above all feel like I'm not quite the right person to, I feel like I'm not quite the right person to be, right now I'm not really facilitating, I'm just recognizing people. But I think that there is some facilitation and some assistance and some support that this group might benefit from. But I want to hear from folks if you have comments about this. The authority is open to hearing from you about whether you want a facilitator for this group, how you would go about selecting a facilitator. The authority is willing to fund the facilitator, or community investment fund. Some of those funds, because it supports this whole structure, could technically be funded from the 400,000, but the authority also understands the importance of this process. And since you guys are still developing your CIF process, the authority is here and willing to support a facilitator. So I guess I just want to open up the floor if people have comments or thoughts about this. If you think it's a good idea to bring in an outside individual to work with this group, or is it that, another option would be, is there a rotating community chair of this group? I think there are lots of different ways this could be done. I think as part of this, another item that I forgot to list on this agenda was that there's a suggestion of having some sort of meeting norms, right? Establishing, and really it's a little bit of what Liliana did, right? We all agree that we're all in this together, that we're going to work together in a positive way moving forward. And is there is there a piece of this where some meeting norms need to be established? So just wanted to toss that out there from my perspective as a person at the authority. And then just hear from you guys about what you think about this issue. So Jorge. Go ahead, Jorge, you're on mute if you're speaking. Okay. All right. Is there anybody else that has a comment about this? And Jorge, please feel free to hop in if you come off mute. I tried to unmute you, but it didn't work. So. Okay. All right. Any other folks have comments or thoughts?
Yeah, Liz, if I could.
Yeah, please, Alfonso. Yeah, for a minute I thought nobody was hearing me, but I'm so glad. Thank you. Jump in, Alfonso.
Yeah, of course, of course. I guess on paper, to me, it sounds like a good idea to have a facilitator, sort of third party that can mediate these sort of conversations. But I guess the thing that I'm not clear on is whose role that is to do. And I say that because, last time, these are, I guess, technically under the, they fall underneath these conversations that fall technically underneath like the CAC or something like that. But then also, even if that wasn't the case, like going back to that last conversation that I was privy to that the CAC had when CRL was basically not going to facilitate CAC conversations anymore, CAC meetings anymore. The decision was made by the CAC or something along those lines to, as far as I know, either facilitate themselves or find a facilitator. So I want to understand where that falls, where this falls in connection to that. Are they connected? If not, could that be made clear why that isn't the case? I just would like things to be clear as to like who's facilitating. I guess the third party, sure, but like who should be in charge of doing that and finding a facilitator, et cetera, et cetera.
I understand. Okay. And let me just, Jorge is off mute now. So Jorge, do you want to make a comment and then we'll double back to Alfonso?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I am the full agreement of having a third party to be the chair, because it is going to make the meetings a lot less volatile and are going to be more fluid. It has to be someone that is not invested in the neighborhood, but yet at the same time understands the neighborhood. But it has to be someone that is not involved in the voting or anything. Because this neighborhood is known to have a lot of divisions and a lot of, how would I call it, exclusion. I don't like you, so you cannot be in this committee. And that is a lot of baloney. I think it needs to be someone, yes, I want someone that is going to be independent, but is going to be knowledgeable and capable, and that knows the neighborhood. That's my point.
Great, thank you, Jorge. So Alfonso, I think you bring up an interesting thing, and I think that we're in a transitional time, right? We're trying to figure out what is the right way to move forward with the community. So, and so CRL stepped away from CAC. Then we sort of started these meetings. We included invitations to all the CAC members, but also tried to, have a broader net. And so this is the group that has kind of come together. It was a little bigger last week. Or last month. And I guess the question generally, and I don't know if other people want to jump in. I want to understand. I think that a third-party facilitator whether we call this CAC or CAC plus community, or just the next sort of iteration of CAC or the community group that is, is talking with the National Western Center Authority, working with the National Western Center Authority, that sits at the table with them to talk about community issues. If that process should involve an outside person. And so it's, like it doesn't really have a name, or maybe it does have a name, but and AE, I know I'm going to have AE speak about, kind of how you had seen things. And then maybe we can get to talk a little more about the facilitation process. And then also, do you have a facilitator and then break into groups, or does the facilitator come first and do a few more things with this group? So AE, I'll let you speak, and then happy to hear from other people as well.
So I appreciate that, Liz. Just a couple sort of bullets in place. In December, when this reached some point of December of last year, needing to be decided because CRL was leaving, the reason I proposed, let's agree to meet at least 3 more times as a National Western Center Citizens Advisory Committee, was to support an orderly transition into a next infrastructure. I want everybody to know that I go back to that framework agreement as a reference constantly. I feel like the way to depoliticize things oftentimes is to look for the process such that it's been made specific. And then if we need to change that process, we'll do that. But it stipulates that this National Western Stock Show Association will provide, or the stock show, I can't remember the exact, which of the 2 entities at this moment, will provide a citizens advisory committee. I don't want to be in violation, or anybody to be in violation. There's not a mechanism in the framework agreement that sunsets this or anything. So the vast majority of the people that have been coming to these meetings have also at some time been at CAC meetings. The National Western Center Citizens Advisory Committee has always been an open meeting. So I think it's a false separation to say that this is a whole new process, et cetera. We're correcting a process the way I'm looking at it. My assertion was that I'd like us to consider the possibility of an authority, an advisory board to the National Western Center Board, the authority board. That's something that would require some developments. Slavica put in the chat, what about start a new name? I want to be really clear that I think new names are fine with me, but that doesn't always create a new process. But there's a continuum here too of accountability to this mechanism being something that does sensitize and engage all of the life at the National Western campus with the life of the most immediately impacted neighborhoods that it's nested in. Thank you, Steve Nally, for that that way of seeing it, and all the neighbors in Denver, because Denver's citizens were the ones that started this when they passed 2C, and then into the state and the world, et cetera. But to me, it starts with the neighborhoods in proximity. So I feel like this is something we do need to discuss. I would love for us to have a flesh and blood meeting as the next meeting, if possible, and to just have a short-term task force to outline some of the possibilities for moving forward with this. And I really think there's a lot of overlap between the values of the CIF and the next iteration of what this relational body from within the neighborhoods will be. I think that, it's a natural return to collaboration between the two that should be part of it. So those are just a couple concepts on that and a little background.
Okay, thanks, AE. And it's the one thing I did go back. I think we need to go back to the framework agreement again. I did a search for Citizens Advisory Committee in the framework agreement, and I didn't find where it specifically called out a Citizens Advisory Committee, except in the recitals where it recognized that the Citizens Advisory Committee had had been involved with doing the neighborhood plans and the master plan and had been gathering information. That being said, the Citizens Advisory Committee has been around for a very long time, and so I don't there and we know, everybody knows that we need some form, however that's going to move forward, of citizen collaboration with the National Western Center. And that may not be exactly the right word, but you know what I mean? It's about everyone sitting at the table together and talking through issues. So those are all good points. And maybe one of our tasks or one of our agenda items for next time would be to have some folks work on, what are the possibilities for how this would be structured. But let me go to Jorge and then we'll kind of double back. So Jorge.
Yes, I just want to share with you that when I hear the word advisory committee, my hair stands up.
Okay.
Because that is something that the structure, the power structures across the country during many years have been using to give a whitewash, and excuse the expression, a whitewash cover to an organization that could be making a difference for the neighborhood, but instead they become advisory to the power brokers or to the staff. And I don't think that if you are asking the community to sit on this committee in order to be an advisory board, then forget it. Might as well don't even ask them.
Great, thank you, Jorge, for that comment. Because I mean, that was something that has come up over the years, is that word advisory. I was trying to use a different word, but so this is where we kind of come to, where we have to kind of figure out what the action items are moving forward. And the authority wants to support everybody on this call and everybody else who wants to be involved in moving forward to figure out what the structure is. So Alfonso, you had asked, is this the CAC? Is this not the CAC? Is it? And I think what we're doing is we're seeing this transition. And so the question is what are the next steps, and what are some steps that we could take now to start planning for the future of a community group that is collaborating, working with the National Western Center on a lot of different issues. And I think that's the thing, is we've identified so many issues. And do we have in this group and with other folks the will to move forward with addressing some of these issues? Could it be as that people could express an interest in being a part of a working group, and then and those working groups go off and work for, say, 2 months, and we come back with people having some recommendations or thoughts or things that they have done, that they're independent groups. That's one possible way that we could do it. Or are there other formats? So Alfonso, I see, I'm going to talk until people raise their hands and let you guys talk. So go ahead, Alfonso.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. I think from where I stand, my viewpoint is, if the CAC is something that is mentioned and implied in the framework agreement, I would like to understand how, what that, where it actually is, what it actually means. Because I would not like to be complicit in, for lack of a better term, a false dissolution, of the CAC or transition that doesn't hold water in terms of like how it actually is defined in the framework agreement. I don't want to be complicit in that before I understand. I want to understand what that process actually looks like, what the CAC, how it's mentioned in the framework agreement, in order to feel comfortable participating in this, in a future capacity, and whatever action items are decided upon collectively. Because, just from my view, it's like, if we're willing to, most of those CAC people aren't even here right now. The acting members of the CAC aren't even here to discuss that.
Mhm.
And that doesn't feel well to me, to be discussing a transition or dissolution or whatever it ends up being, or a renaming it, rebranding, it doesn't matter. Without those people here in the first place, that seems insulting. I would be insulted if I was one of them. And like, I come into the next meeting and say, yeah, so it's a dissolution and this is the new group. Like, I don't want to be complicit in something that won't hold water in that regard.
So, Alfonso, I'm going to call on Jen Wellborn, who, as you may know, Jen works at the city. She was in the city attorney's office. She was around and present when the framework agreement was being drafted. She's just done a search for us. And so, Jen, I'm going to let you tell us what you found. Thank you.
Sure. I think those are important concerns to address. I'm happy, AE, to talk to you further about this either offline or at this meeting, when we have some more time, or when we get to see each other in person, which I agree, I would love to do. I don't see that the framework agreement requires that an entity called the Citizens Advisory Council be involved. It does, in the recitals, acknowledge the work that the CAC had done previous to the signing of the framework agreement. The fact that it existed, that folks had participated on it, it's an acknowledgement. It doesn't require the consultation with that particular body that I can find anywhere in the agreement. Alfonso, what it does do is, in the community investment fund section, it does call out that the community should be making decisions about the application of monies raised into the CIF, but it does not contemplate how the community would make those decisions. It just merely calls for a small c community to drive the decision making there. Is that helpful? And if it's not, let me know, and I'm happy to do some more reading.
Just very quickly, because I see other people have their hands up. I mean, that helps, but I think that makes me feel even more uneasy about that transition, because it seems like because this group was started, we could just do away with the CAC. I've never particularly been a fan of it, but despite the fact, I, once again, if the National Western, if community members aren't willing to respect, these people that already exist, I don't know, that doesn't feel good to me. That's all I would say.
Yeah, and I'm just here to say I don't have an opinion about that. I just the city wants to engage however you guys want to engage, and the document does not dictate how that happens.
Perfect. Okay. Great, thanks. I'm going to call on Anne and then go to AE. Anne?
Hi, thanks, Liz.
You bet.
So what I wanted to suggest, that it seems as though a third-party facilitator would be wonderful to have, because what I am hearing, if I'm hearing correctly, is that there still are a lot of kind of unique issues that we need to address. And I would hate to immediately go from something like this, where everyone is talking together, to small groups, because I don't think that we have figured out quite yet how we split and then come together again to share. And so, governance of the process is certainly, and going forward, is certainly one of the big issues. And then there's the buckets of things that people want to understand and have input into. One of them is the land, the development, the future development of the triangle is something that some people are interested in. Some of it is representation. And so I think it would be wonderful if, even just for one session, we could have a facilitator that perhaps the authority brings on, that is a third party, but that we don't have to go through a whole process with an RFP and trying to find, people submitting proposals. If the authority is willing to bring someone in, maybe if some of us know people like that, we could make a suggestion, of who to use. There are third-party facilitators out there, But, we've talked about this early on several meetings ago, and I still think it's a very valid suggestion just to get us organized in our thinking. It's unfair for you to have to take on all of that. That's my thinking about it.
Great, thank you, Anne. And now AE.
Yes, I just want to, excuse me, reinforce. I hope everybody saw that I copied directly into chat from page 3 of the framework agreement. That is in line with what Liz was saying, and it reads, in 2013, the WSSA established a Citizens Advisory Committee made up predominantly of residents and business owners from the Gloveville, Leary, and Swansea neighborhood to advise on the campus development, and it goes into that. And Jen and Liz, I agree that it is correct, and I will correct myself, and I looked inside myself in the course of this conversation. Why do I feel that so strongly that something of the model of CAC is part of what the commitment in principle is of the project partners, and that I'm including the constituencies. And it is because the structure of the National Western Center Citizens Advisory put at the table the partners of the project, the equity partners, the founding partners, the citizens that are in the neighborhoods that are most impacted by this, and policymakers and organizations, all of which are accountable to the well-being of the constituency, the citizens, the residents, the people whose lives are the organism of our lives are affected by this project. And there are accountabilities throughout the framework agreement for the National Western Center campus to be accountable to the constituencies, for lack of a better word, but the collective, fully engaged democratic inclusiveness of all the people that are especially most closely living in this area. So I agree we have an opportunity to possibly sunset the National Western Center Citizens Advisory Committee as a mechanism. I think that the way to honor the process is to be thoroughly honest and about how it has succeeded and how it has not succeeded. And that's part of what my striving is if we're even as we talk about new facilitation, and it has a lot more to do than with just how you run a meeting. It has a lot to do with what is the investment that is encouraged among all of us with each other, and how do we strive together on this? And so I think that I think we need to model that, and the CIF is offering some things in that arena, and I think that some of that is coming out of the reflection of what lessons that need to be learned from the CAC. But I also don't, I'm with Alfonso, I don't want to dismiss the work that was done. I do think this is a longer conversation that we all need to have. And I think that the authority has to have this conversation with us and with itself as well, because I think that there were things along the way that all kinds of things could have been done differently. And I want us to be able to do this in a way that is not competitive or contentious. And we have to look at these processes, what decisions were made along the way, and that kind of a thing. So I agree that accountability is a mechanism that can continue by having people. I want to emphasize that I feel having the partners at the table directly is to the benefit of all of us, and that was part of what the CAC was, and that we as neighborhoods and constituents can do a great deal more to become cohesive in an effort to engage a much broader, I don't want to say representation, but get a much broader engagement across the board in that. And as far as the facilitation, just one quick thing, I want to be really mindful of the history of facilitation in the civic process in the neighborhoods when facilitators are brought in, and not just myself, but I think there is a fair amount of frustration with the quality of facilitators that are being brought in. So somehow we have to have a way to Civic Partners was one suggestion that Director of Clinica Tepeyac, let's say is Garcia, Jim Garcia mentioned that there was a gentleman at Civic Partners is a possibility. I think he's accessible to talk to, but yeah, we have to find a way to do that that takes into considerations, takes everything into consideration. That's it.
Liz, I can't find the thing to raise my hand.
Oh, that's okay. Go ahead and speak, Susan.
Okay. Well, I think as the document Jen read said, the CAC was established to advise the National Western Stock Show Association. The authority didn't even exist. And so I think maybe a facilitated discussion on what does the community, what kind of advice do they want to give to the authority, not the Stock Show Association? And just that first process is done. And the Stock Show Association no longer needs the advice of the CAC. The authority does. So I think you need to think about what role do you want to play, and the authority needs to think about what role would they want a citizen committee to play.
Okay. I'm going to recognize Slavitz and AE in a minute, but Mercedes, you're unmuted. Did you want to contribute something? No. Okay.
No.
Oh, no. Okay. Thank you, Mercedes. Slavitz.
Just wanted to say that Susan is absolutely right. I mean, when this whole process started, authority was not formed quite yet. So it was a stock show that brought everybody together as an original occupant of, that whole area that brought the partners together and started facilitating. But now that we have the authority, I just really want to go on record that for the CRL, which is also done on behalf of our client, it made sense to transition this to an entity that actually brings all the partners together. So that no longer is just a stock show. And I thought at the last, time that we facilitated, I thought we were going towards this notion. We have an opportunity to create something that really serves everyone, and that the things have changed a little bit since, the CAC was assembled and the whole project started, and that the timing was really good to reassess and look at what the role is, and, does it have any, is it just advisory or what is it really? And, I thought about hiring either Civic Canopy or any other third-party facilitator to really help in that process, in really defining all of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Slavitz. AE, and then we'll get back to you, Susan.
So I'm in an uncomfortable position, and I just want to say it because it's not my desire to be contentious. It's my desire to understand at a depth what we're doing here. And with respect, I profoundly disagree with what Susan and Slavitz just said, that it was there in relationship to the stock show. The National Western Stock Show Association, it was a mechanism to help the way it is in the wording that I sent from the framework agreement to the neighborhoods to advise on the campus development. And it helps me understand, I'm going to say in all honesty, over the years, the frustration I have felt, because to me, this has been from the outset a partnered, synergistic project that was inclusive of, and certainly to tend to the preservation and the elevation and retention of the stock show, but it was inclusive of Colorado State University, Denver, the City of Denver, National Western Stock Show Association, Denver Museum of Nature and Science, and History Colorado, the founders. It was always, from the very beginning discussions and in the legislation, et cetera, always a synergistic project that was intended to incorporate a sensitivity and a position of respect and inclusion and responsiveness to the neighborhood constituency. So if people have been, this is very frustrating to me, because that may explain why we haven't gotten further, and for later discussion, we can go into this more deeply in terms of the engagement and the modeling of the process going forward from here. So I absolutely agree that there is less of a mechanism in the framework agreement literally than I was imagining, and but I want to be really clear that the spirit of the sense of what is said in that one statement to advise on the campus development, and advise is not necessarily the most engaging relationship. That is certainly something to discuss. But anyway, I really fundamentally disagree that now it's larger than the stock show. So it has always been more inclusive of the project, of the partners, and a much more dynamic vision from the very outset. And I think this may be where we fell down, in a sense, is for that not to have been the manner with which everyone that was engaged with the National Western Center Citizens Advisory Committee was coming in to forming the relationships and moving forward with it. So we can discuss it more, but I just want to go on record with that. Thanks.
Thanks, AE. Susan? Did you have another comment, or did I just forget to put your hand down?
No, I don't think we disagree. I'm just saying, as what you put in the thing says, that it was established by the WSSA, not the city, not the authority. I would suggest maybe we think about going forward, if people want to have facilitated discussions, have a meeting with the only topic being everybody can bring information. We can put out, not a formal RFP, but bring information on different facilitators. We can look at their background. You can choose as a group who the facilitator should be. And then as we move forward, I think the other thing I just think we need to be really clear about is if you're advising the authority, because there's a lot of talk about the undeveloped parcels there, that will be a city process, not an authority process. I mean, the authority will play a role, but in the end, it will be the city, and especially some of the Coliseum and the areas that are around there are not part of what the authority oversees. So I think we've ended up with kind of a convoluted mess. But I would suggest, schedule a meeting in the next couple of weeks, and those that are interested can sit down and meet, talk through, and everybody agree on who the facilitator should be. And then we can move forward from there.
Thanks, Susan. AE, did I forget to put? Okay, go ahead.
I just want to say that Civic Canopy is a name that has come up that Jim Garcia recommended. I'm withholding endorsement of anything at this point, but I think it's important to look at that. I do, with respect, Susan, I think that we are seeing things a little bit differently, but this can be a future discussion. I feel that the acreage that is defined as the National Western Center campus is all accountable to the processes and the values put in the framework agreement, and that with great thanks to the National Western Stock Show Association, a mechanism was created when there was no infrastructure, and it was the National Western Center Citizens Advisory Committee. And it was to be a holistic, it was to have a holistic impact on this project. And I think this is an area where I think the concept of the project is perhaps not as collectively clear, but later for more discussion. But I don't feel that the authority the authority board and the authority office are an organizing principle that are critical, as far as I'm concerned, to every square inch of earth and project that is involved in the master planned National Western Center campus. So let's, and I don't even know what time it is. I can't see my clock, but I want to say going forward that I'm always skittish when additional meetings are recommended. But I would like to recommend that we set another meeting in April or May, and that we, in the meantime, continue to use you, Liz, as a focal point for bringing suggestions and have a serious discussion about facilitating and planning the agenda for the next meeting. In the meantime, as many of us as possible can get together around different task force interests and get to know each other. But that would be my suggestion, is that the priority for how to facilitate this going forward, the pros and cons of where the funding might come from to fund it, if that's necessary. Are you receptive would it work for you to be a focal point for creating an inclusive statement of ideas to document as the basis for the discussion going into a next meeting in April, having to do with the organizing and facilitating of these meetings going forward? And it's fine with me if we bring in another facilitator in the process of it to meet them. I mean, I think there may be something to do. So I kind of agree with what Anna's saying.
Okay. I'm just trying to parse out the pieces of that. So, A, could you tell me again, you would like to see the next meeting be a facilitated meeting or a meeting where we come together to talk about facilitators? Which one of those?
In the most relaxed sense would be a meeting that had basically maybe 3 agenda items. Talking about facilitation and inviting, we could invite a prospect or two to come and talk to us about them as facilitators. Civic Canopy might be one of them. Mm-hmm. And I really feel we need to get moving on getting the clarification of the selection process for the authority board member and how that is developing, as far as us having the conversation with as broad a number of us out in the neighborhoods as possible as to how to structure the way that the authority board members from the neighborhoods would be supported and be made accountable mutually. There are a couple things I feel like we really need, and other folks, if there's other folks that feel like out of those task forces or that we really need to move on things, let's suggest agenda items right now, if you don't mind. But so I would suggest that we maybe move to have invite a facilitator, and we can discuss the pros and cons of how to fund it at the meeting too. What do people think?
So can we decide at this meeting that you do want a facilitator? And that at the next meeting, the agenda item will be to review, to invite potential facilitators?
The meetings definitely have to be facilitated.
So well, let's just say, because we've talked facilitation now for 6 months.
Well, for actually 5 years, but that we can talk about that too.
I would just say that, maybe the next meeting, so we can start moving forward. The goal of that meeting would be to choose a facilitator moving forward. And then maybe that facilitator could lead you in a discussion on what the priorities are and whether you want to work in work groups or as a whole group. I think that's a whole conversation. So anyway, that's it.
Liliana.
Hi, sorry.
Hi.
So I just want to add my 2 cents to this last part of the conversation around selection of facilitators. So yes, I agree. We need facilitation for all the reasons stated. And I think we do need more support in figuring out what this next iteration or evolution, whatever it's going to be, of the CAC, and figuring out a way to honor what has happened since the inception of too many alphabet soups of the CAC, and figure out a way forward. I do think before we can make a decision on a facilitator, I think we need to, and I don't know the process by which I was going to put it on Liz's plate, but I don't know that that's necessarily fair, to send like your list of qualities. I feel like at the next meeting, I mean, I want us to move fast so we find a facilitator, but I also want us to be able to make a good decision with all the information that we need in order to make that decision. So what are the qualities that we're looking for in this facilitator? And then figuring out then what the possibilities are for selecting, identifying, to selecting the facilitator, and then what that interview process is going to be like. Are they all going to be on at the same time? Do we tell them to come on for 30 minutes at a time and tell us, what they're all about back to back, at an upcoming meeting? I just think we need to think through the process a little bit more.
Okay.
Those are my 2 cents.
That's a good point, Liliana. I think so. I am willing to do and support you guys in what you want to do. And I think one of the, we're talking about, we want to make sure that we're honoring what you guys want. And so I know that's hard because I could just go out and find a facilitator and bring them to a meeting. We don't want to do that, right? So maybe it's that following this meeting, I have a list of 40 email addresses that I send all these meetings to. And I'm happy to send out a pretty simple email that says there was a lot of support within the group, and has been for the past few months and probably even longer, to bring on a new outside person to facilitate the future of how the community, and that's a broad word, works with the National Western Center. And I'm not going to use the word advise, because I think work with is what we're looking toward. I think that's how we're thinking about this, that it's being at the table together, working and figuring out things together.
How about partners with?
Partners with, right. There you go. And so tell me if this is okay, and chime in, or if everybody wants, if you think it's okay, everybody raise your hands. I can send an email tomorrow that says, this group has been meeting, facilitation has emerged as an important piece, but we need to know what you as members of this group feel are the qualities that you're looking for in somebody that's going to facilitate. It might be something like they're a really nice person, or they understand the community but are not a member of the community or groups within the community. It could be, we want a person from the community. It could be any of those things. And that I can collect all that data, right? And then I would also ask, do you know facilitators? Are there people that you've worked with? I've gotten some suggestions in the chat, but are there more people that we could work with? And then we'll have this, hopefully we'll get responses, and I'll keep asking, and then we'll have kind of a collection of data. And then do you want to, I can share that back with everybody so that everybody can see it, and then we can try to get some, I just don't know if in a month we'll be able to gather all that and then have some folks come to a meeting in April, but that might be possible, but it might not be. So then I can just reach out and find some folks that would come and talk to the group. Is that not quite the next step? So Liliana, could you chime in on that? Because I want to know, like, I'm happy to gather the data, but then once we have that data, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I appreciate what you're sharing, Liz, and I realize it's 7:02, so we're a couple
Yep.
minutes over.
Mhm.
I think having folks send you or add to a shared Google Doc or whatever the process is.
Yep.
I think getting everyone's ideas down, sharing it, and then you sharing it ahead of the meeting
Mhm.
back with us.
Yep.
And then I think the next meeting we do have to spend a little bit more time talking about selection process.
Okay.
And figuring out, like, is it 20 to 30 minute interviews during the next meeting, setting them up, who exactly are we going to seek out partnerships with, etc. So I know we want a facilitator on sooner rather than later, but I
Mhm.
think it's just going to take a little bit more time, and my kid's crying, so I have to go.
Yep. No, I got it. Thank you. So, and you guys, I'm going to ask you to, the best thing I can do is ask you to use your hand raise function at this point. If you are happy with me collecting the data, sharing it back with the group, and then us coming together to talk about a selection process at the next meeting for a facilitator, could you raise your hand? Okay. I'm just kind of trying to watch and see. It looks like, I think we're getting to almost unanimous. Excellent. Okay. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to share out, create a document, share it back, and then the focus of the next meeting will be the selection process that, we have X number of candidates, and how are we going to bring them in? How are we going to screen them? And then how are we going to decide? So happy to do that. And unless anybody else has any other comments, I would like to do the next meeting in person, but we will also offer a Zoom option. I think we have the technology to do that. I will tell you that I will not be in person because I will be on vacation, but I can come in via Zoom. So we will have somebody else, probably our friend Jenna, who will be in the office. And so we'll facilitate a hybrid translated meeting to talk about process for hiring a facilitator. If there are no comments about that, then I think we're probably done, and we're only 5 minutes over our allotted time. So great. Any other comments? Going once, going twice. Awesome. Thanks, everybody.